Welcome to the Jets UK podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Andrew Groves, and I'm joined by my co-hosts David Wyatt-Hupton and Matthew Merrett. Guys, how are you doing today?
All good, thank you, Andres. All good. We are into prime time now, aren't we? The playoffs are happening, season. But more importantly, off season. So renewed hope, renewed optimism. So it's exciting, and I'm kind of ready to kind of get stuck into it. It always feels like when the season ends, you kind of want to get straight to it, don't you? You want to get straight into free agency and draft, but the draft's not till the end of April, so we've got plenty of time to kind of digest, approach, think about it, and more importantly, talk about it all on the pod.
It was up to some people. We wouldn't be allowed to talk about it until after free agency, so we'll leave it as that. But David, how are you feeling about things today and as we finish the season now?
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's sad. It's sad that we haven't got any football now to look forward to for, 9 months? I mean, the NFL off-season is just a behemoth, isn't it? It's so long that we're kind of, like Matt says, ready to go. I want to see what the Jets in 2022 look like. We've got months until we'll get to that, and then another month for the draft. So, I mean, it's nice sitting back and watching playoff football without having to worry about how the Jets look and what the narrative's going to be about Zach and all these different questions we've had to deal with over the last few months. So I'll enjoy the last few years of football, and then obviously we'll get onto the Senior Bowl and bits and pieces. So looking forward to the off season for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be a really fun one. Coming off this year with the staff now have established themselves. We know kind of what they're about and the players they've gone after and how they've panned out. And I think it's you lay on the positives that draft season and everything that was brought in with those guys last year, and you add this off season with another year of the scouts and the coaches working together. It's very exciting, and with continue with even more assets than last year, and supposedly probably more spending, because I think JD will have to. He'll have to do it, because I don't think we can have another season like that if he wants to keep his job. It's just we just get to the point now. It's like it's go time. It's time to put everything down and really get around Zach and get around these coaches and put some talent on the team. So we'll get into all the news and the recap of the season. We'll recap the Bills game as well a little bit a bit later on. Just to say, this is our last show of the year. We'll be having a break until after the Super Bowl, and then we'll be back raring to go, heading into free agency, heading into the draft, and a lot of good stuff that we've got planned for that time as well. So in the usual spots, you'll still be active on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook if you want to hit us up on those. We'll obviously be on our YouTube channel. We'll be uploading stuff in the off season. There'll be more kind of content and different content than just the podcast in video form. So check out our YouTube channel as well. David's work will continue to pump out, I'm guessing. Is that right, David? The Jets way?
Yeah, I plan to reduce it to 3 newsletters from this week, but I'm already on the 4th one on Wednesday, so that hasn't really gone to plan, but right. I will be putting it down to 3 per week instead of 5, but yeah, it'll keep coming.
It's still there for you guys, so yeah, subscribe to that, some good stuff there. So yeah, I think we'll head off into, from there we'll head off into our news segment. Okay, so for the news this week, it was quite a lot of news actually hit us. Some expected and some unfortunately unexpected. I think the biggest news of the week was obviously the passing of Don Maynard, a legendary Jet wide receiver, legendary NFL receiver, just an unbelievable player who's obviously played with Joe Namath and was kind of that part of that team that really inspired the change in the NFL with the win in Super Bowl III. I know, David, you wanted to say something about Maynard. So you said you wanted to say something. So I'll hand over to you to what you want to say about Don Maynard.
Yeah, I mean, Don Maynard was kind of, when I first started looking into Jets history, I'm a bit of a history buff. I'm a history graduate, so the history of the team is something that interests me quite a lot. And Don was one of the first players that I really looked into, mainly because he stayed close to the Jets organization over the last few decades. He's always been around the team. He's always been spoken about really, really kindly, and Don was this Texas boy through and through. I mean, he got drafted by the Giants, turned up to Giants camp with a cowboy hat firmly placed on his head. He said he didn't even know where New York was. So when he came up, he had to look at where New York was in the National Geographic. He just didn't have a clue. I mean, he was a country boy. And that kind of he just revolutionized the way we saw the game, because he was the quickest player in the league. he was once asked, "Do you think you were one of the quickest players in the league?" And he just turned around and said, "No, I was the quickest player in the league. I never got caught from behind. I was always, you watch any highlights, and that Namath to Maynard kind of go route was just the absolute staple of the Jets for years and years and years. So, his contribution to the Super Bowl win was outstanding. You look at the box score and you'll see 0 catches, but that doesn't really tell the true story. I mean, his performance against Oakland in the championship game was the reason we got there. He had a hamstring injury in that game, so Baltimore didn't know that. This is before you had to disclose your injuries. So Baltimore expected to see a fully fit Don Maynard. He had a really dodgy hamstring, could barely run, and he still kind of got double teamed the whole game, which allowed other players to make plays. And post the game, they said, you'll get your check in the the mail. He said, I don't want no check. I want it in dimes because I want to feel it. And that was kind of just who Don was. And it's always sad when anyone passes away, anyone to do with the organization. But someone like Don was just a staple, the first ever player to sign on with the Titans. So it's just a really sad week in Jets Nation. I mean, I think he was 86 when he passed. So he's had a good life. He enjoyed it. If you have a chance, go and check out his Hall of Fame speech. He ended it on such a great little note. It's well worth reading. I did actually add it in the newsletter this morning, just the end bit, but the whole thing's worth reading. But obviously thoughts and prayers with his family. Thanks for the memories, and there are plenty of YouTube highlights out there. Go and check him out because he said him and Namath had this thing where it would be a 2-option route, which is kind of revolutionary at the time. It would be an out, and if the out wasn't there, it was a go, and it would be a hook, and if the hook wasn't there, it was a go, and everything ended on that go route. And it kind of looks that way when you watch the highlights. So go and check that out. But just massive thank you to Dom for everything he did for the organisation, and it's a sad week for us as Jets fans.
Yeah, it's definitely. Yeah, go on, Matt. You want to say something? Yeah.
I was just going to say, putting it into perspective, if you go and look at the Jets receiving records, like season records, all-time records, even after all this time, he is still right at the top of those lists, and I think that's a testament to just what a player he was, even in those early years when it was such a running-dominated league. Just to still be at the top and still hold those records is just kind of testament to him as a player.
Yeah, I mean, he's around the 30 mark in all-time receiving yards in the NFL, which is crazy when you think of how much pass-happy the game has gone in the last 20, 30 years. To the fact that he still is up there in terms of how prolific he was during his career. So an absolute legend. Like I said, David, as you pick up the team and the history of the team, it's impossible to see, his impossible to miss his impact on the team and how important it was, and in that kind of in the kind of first few years of the franchise. So
one thing I'll just say as well, Andre, is he did write a book. So it's a autobiography called "You Can't Catch Sunshine." Heavily suggest any Jets fan go out and get that because it's a fantastic read about the start of the organisation and about how he got cut from the Giants and had to go to Canada to play for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Just a really good read. So I would heavily recommend you go out and get that. I don't think it's too expensive. It's on Amazon and other places.
Yeah, some good off-season reading as well, and something to remember him by as well. Condolences to his family and friends as well, and everyone that knew him. So, we move on to the next news, and he was obviously Don Maynard was one of the greats, and two of the other greats in our history, Marty Lyons and Mark Gastineau. They came through the the 79 draft. That's the last time the Jets were at the Senior Bowl, and they finally get announced that they're going to be at the Senior Bowl, which is fantastic news. Matt, what's your takeaway from this? I mean, we're all really excited about this. Jets Twitter's popping off and really excited. We're a bunch of nerds about this,
No, it feels like one of those things we've been close to so many times and have just missed out in traditional Jets fashion, hasn't it? I think it's an exciting opportunity. I think it's twofold. I think firstly for the coaching staff, for Salah, LaFleur, Ulbrich, and those guys beneath them, it's a great opportunity to go down there, meet the players, and kind of boost their personal profiles, particularly up against NFL's media's crush and Dan Campbell and the plucky Lions. And they obviously got a lot of plaudits as a coaching staff this year. So to be up against those guys and kind of embrace it. And Salah and Campbell are two great media personalities. So I think it should be a really good Senior Bowl. And they're actually doing it slightly differently this year where the coaches are getting promotions. So the head coaches will kind of work in a consultancy role and they will internally promote staff. So it might be Lafleur works as a head coach, or someone gets promoted to the offensive coordinator of that staff. So it'll be interesting to see what they do there in terms of structuring it. So it's a great opportunity to kind of self-develop, self-reflect, particularly after a tough season, but a first season for a lot of these coaches.
Yeah,
I think that the second benefit is kind of the most obvious one, and that's getting to know the draft prospects and the players in a bit more detail. I mean, picking 4 and 10, I don't think either of those picks, those top 2, will really be impacted by the Senior Bowl. But when you look at the prospects and positions of needs, you've got people like tight ends like Trey McBride, Jeremy Ruckert, Isaiah Likely. You've got linebackers like Devin Lloyd, Chad Muma, cornerbacks Kendrick Bryant. You've got people who are at positions of needs and are going to be there with a chance to impress our staff early. I should also mention Dotson from Penn State, the wide receiver, is also at Senior Bowl. So
don't forget Cole Strange. David's guy Cole Strange is there as well.
Cole Strange, how could I? And these are guys who are day 2 and day 3 talents. I mean, Devin Lloyd might sneak into the first round out to those guys, but the rest are all in that range and in positions for needs for the Jets. So the Jets are going to get hands-on, and that there are numerous examples if you look back. I mean, Deebo Samuel this season springs to mind in terms of what he's been able to put up. And, of course, San Francisco that year took him in the second round. So getting hands-on, being able to work with the players, experience them in this kind of competitive environment where they're going through the drills, where they're going through the in essence, what is a game week preparation and kind of getting ready for that and seeing what they're like is so different to anything you would otherwise get in the draft process, where you're kind of relying on your scouts' information to speak to coaches about what they're like. And obviously you got the combine and private workouts and pro days where they're kind of in these very perfect, sterile environments to kind of operate. This is something a bit more rugged, a bit more true to form. And if it's anything like how Salah and his staff were able to kind of work in the last process and kind of get that extra information, where we saw them hit on day 2 and day 3 picks, it's only going to be to the Jets' benefit as they try and turn this thing around. So it's an exciting opportunity, and it'll be great to watch it take place.
Yeah, David, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean this is really exciting. I mean it's been a long time, and for as bad as we've been, and they tend to pick teams that are relatively low in terms of win percentage. You know, I'm surprised it's taken us so long to get back there, but
yeah,
it does represent such a great opportunity for us. I mean, it's everything Matt just said. It's about how these prospects retain information. It's about, I was talking to Connie Carberg about it, and she was kind of like, even more so now, different teams have all these different schemes, and you can kind of plant that information into these prospects and see how they kind of work within that process, within that scheme. I mean, the game itself is kind of, it is a glamorized all-star game. There are certain things you can't do. You can't rush more than 4 players. You can't hit below the weight. You can't block below the waist. But the one-on-one drills is what every coach every year says is the key aspect of the Senior Bowl, and being able to coach them into those drills.
Yeah.
So you're talking offensive line versus defensive line, wide receivers versus defensive backs. And all of this is, they do stream a lot of it on YouTube as well, so we'll be able to see a lot of that. But the fact that, some of the kind of, I wouldn't say lesser down, but some of the smaller coaches get to take on this head coaching role, get that experience. Salah's still going to be really involved, I imagine, in the linebackers more than anything.
Yeah.
So that's a position of need for us. I'm excited that Chad Muma is going to be there, because you know how much I like that guy, and Salah's going to get one-on-one attention with him. Same with Cole Strange. You mentioned him again, a guy that I really like, thinks fits the system. So, it'll feel confident if they pass on those guys, or if they don't feel that they're going to go that way. It's based on even more information than they had last year, so you'd feel confident with them passing there.
Yeah.
But it is such a good opportunity, because Mark Gastineau going into that 1979 Senior Bowl was considered a 4th, 5th round prospect. Jets ended up taking him in the 2nd round, and look what happened. So
yeah,
there are evidence of that all up and down kind of the history of the Senior Bowl. So I'm really excited to see. I love the Senior Bowl anyway, but knowing the Jets are going to get this inside information, getting insight into their character, their mentality, that's the added bit that you don't get, because every team will send scouts there, every team will send evaluators and GMs and coaches, but it's that kind of character and the mentality, and the going through the process of getting ready for a game, and getting ready for the drills, seeing how they react to certain information. That's the stuff that you don't get from just watching.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff the Jets will get from actually coaching. So
it's massive.
Really exciting.
It's massive. I mean, I saw Jim Nagy talking about that, about the fact that it's not just about everyone gets to see them on the field and the drills, but it's the stuff that you see that the other coaches won't be able to see. The stuff in the meeting rooms, in the cafeteria, interacting with them, just speaking with them, seeing what they're like as young men. Those are massive, especially for Salah and Joe Douglas, and we'll get to those two in a second with their presser. But those two talk so much about culture and finding the right guys, the guys who love ball and the guys who will do everything to protect that love of playing football. Those are the things that are going to be massive to getting those right characters when you're looking at those kind of mid-round guys. Like, you can see what's on tape, you see what's there, but then those moments there that they're going to spend with them are going to be invaluable, and it really does give you confidence that they're going to be able to have, there's going to be a few more gems, which, those gems that we got last year, if you talk about going from Michael Carter to Michael Carter II and Brandon Eccles, those are gems in the back. They've really kind of outperformed their draft stock, all of them. And if we can get a few more of those, that's just going to accelerate the process of us getting back into being a good team. So it's just really exciting. It just adds another layer of excitement to this offseason, which was already super exciting. So, yeah, it's just a big moment and really fun. And it's going to be a fun weekend, a fun week at the Senior Bowl. We'll go to JD and Salah's presser as we wrap up the news. What were your main takeaways, David, from what the guys had to say?
Yeah, like most postseason pressers, they don't give away too much. It is a lot of lip service to what you'd expect them to say about needing to improve after only having 6 wins in the last 2 seasons. Joe Douglas said he needs to do better in terms of the roster construction to give Salah the players that he needs. A couple of things that it was obvious they were really aligned on how they see football. Salah mentioned it, Joe Douglas mentioned it, about their philosophical kind of insights into how they view football and how they view building the team. A couple of Rich Samini asked probably the most annoying question about Zach Wilson and how he was statistically the worst quarterback in every single measure, without giving any context to the situation. And Joe Douglas handled that really well, I thought.
The question was, and why should you have confidence in him? I'm like, all right, Rich. It's like a classic Samini question. Like, I was
you could just put that question down on paper and ask 1,000 Jets fans who asked that question, and 900 plus would say Rich Samini.
Yeah.
So it was one of those, but Joe Douglas handled it well. Two key bits that I took from there is kind of, he talked about the 2020 draft class and about rate of development because of the 2021 draft class and how successful it's been early doors. The question was 2020 doesn't look half as good, and he kind of came out and just said, different players develop at different speeds, different times. Nobody's giving up on these guys. They have to go away and they have to come back in the right. And he mentioned mental state a few times. So he mentioned about coming back in
Mims, and especially
that was on Mims.
So and Mackay as well,
and Mackay Becton. So
the right mentality,
Mims
right?
Are the right mentality. The two people that probably can save that 2020 draft class. My confidence in Mims is at an all-time low. I think we probably will end up trading him. Joe Douglas is not going to come out and say, I'm going to trade him this offseason. He'll say, we still believe in him. He's still got an incredible amount of talent. And then I'll go and fleece him to someone for a second-round pick somewhere. So,
I don't know. I at some point, I'm not... like I said, the one thing that gets me is that he's not... he seems to be a very good locker room guy. Like, people like him. So he's struggling. And obviously, that's only going to take him so far, if he's not taking any, if he's maybe not showing the right attitude. But he's not seen to be some sort of disruptive force. So he maybe, if they don't get the return, maybe they give him a third year, second year in this system and really say, this is your last chance. Maybe that kind of will get the light switch. And, maybe if you don't get a good return, then there's no harm in bringing him back because, like I said, he's a good kid. So I don't know. We'll see. We never know.
I guess it depends what the return you think you should get, because the danger is it's only 2 years, so there's going to be another team who looks at his measurables and looks at his speed and his size and goes, I think we can rescue that. If he puts a third year on tape where he still doesn't produce, you're probably going to go from a 4th-round pick to a conditional 6th or 7th. So I think if you can get a 4th right now for Denzel, if someone called you and said, I'll give you a 4th, I'd take that, because it's just not worked in the system, has it? And
no.
I guess it depends what we do at the wide receiver position. Because if we go ahead and draft a Dotson or a London or whoever it is, or we sign one in free agency, he's not going to get that many opportunities to bolster his stock behind Davis and Moore, and I firmly believe we'll bring Braxton back as well. So it's really interesting. But the other side of JD's kind of comment about, I think it was Connor who asked him, would you be willing or open to trading some of your draft capital for proven NFL talent? And that's something that hasn't really happened historically for JD. And he was kind of open to that. He didn't shoot it down. He said he kept using, we have the flexibility and the versatility to use these in different ways. So that's kind of opened the door. I still expect him to use the draft because later in the conference he said, our philosophy is the same, that you build through the draft and then you supplement it through free agency. So I've just got a feeling he will still do that. But it's quite interesting that he was open to the idea that he could trade a first or a second for a proven NFL player if
I
he
think
came
if
available.
I think it's one of those things where if there's an opportunity to make a good deal and you get someone in who's a proven player, it means it crosses off the list of needs in the draft, which is obviously what you want, because then you can pick. It helps you pick best player available. It gives you the best chance to pick best player available at each pick if you've got more needs crossed off going into the draft. So if he feels he can do that with a third or a second round pick or a combination of picks to get someone, depending on who it is, I think it's someone that I think there's some options out there in the wide receiver. There's a couple of guys who are kind of damaged by injury. There's a couple of guys who are, there's obviously the Calvin Ridley situation. So it's an interesting kind of situation with some of the receivers who could actually be very valuable pieces to the offense that could be available at their current team. So it'll be interesting off season. Like I said, just adds another layer to it, and it does add an extra layer of intrigue as well.
You've got to mention, and we got our yearly "you build the team through the trenches" comment, which we always get from JD.
From both of them.
From both of them, they said, here in New York, we're always going to build from the trenches out. So, as soon as that kind of came out, as expected, you're like,
Evan Neal at 4, right? Or
Evan Neal at 4,
or Kwonu at 4,
yeah. Offensive lineman or a defensive lineman coming in at 4 and 10. So, let's see what comes out of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, is there anything you would say about the kind of JD and Salah's comments at all?
No, I think David covered it all. The only thing I'd add is I kind of feel like JD always does a good job of, like, he doesn't give excuses and he kind of owns up to it, and I think that's something which is somewhat refreshing. The thing that I think he is aware of is the honeymoon period is over, and I think everyone kind of most people gave them the runway of this year, bearing in mind it's kind of like still quite sparse roster, rookie head coach, rookie quarterback. I think they kind of appreciate that this honeymoon period and this runway is over, and there is expectations to deliver next year. I've seen some people say if they don't get the playoffs, they should be fired. I'm not that far. I think there's too much context to just let on one thing, and especially in terms of saying get 10 wins or you're not in the building, because I don't think that kind of adds flexibility and context to what's going around. But I think we definitely need to see a big step forward next season, and this season probably felt like a medium-sized step forward. It wasn't anywhere near as bad as the final Gase season, and they ran a lot of teams close, and they could have been better than their 4-13 record. But you kind of need to see at least double the amount of wins next year, I think, roughly.
Definitely, I think it's something that we have to be, knocking on the edge of the playoffs. Really like competing to get into the playoffs as we end the final weeks of the season. We're still in play. Still chasing a draft playoff position. That's what you want to see, even if we don't make it. You want to see us competitive right to the end of next season. That will show real improvement. I think for that, we'll wrap up the news segment and we'll head over to our end of season recap. Okay, so for the end of season recap, we'll kick off by just having a quick chat about the Bills game, just to wrap up. Obviously, not that significant stuff happened. It was a bit of a mess, but we'll start off with that. David, what was your thoughts about the Bills game?
Do we have to talk about it? Do we have to?
Oh, you got to kind of recap it in some way. I guess I know it's a bit of waste of time. I mean, should we talk about Zach's performance generally? And I think he obviously played conservative. He obviously was taking care of the ball quite well. Another game without an interception against a top 10, interception defense. So I think it was another game where he took the care of the ball. It was just no one took care of him, basically.
I mean, how can you expect Zach to do anything in that game? And Tariq Black was one of his main receivers at the end of that game because Crowder went out after a couple of plays, and Braxton was obviously missing, and Moore was missing, and Davis was missing.
Moses went out as well.
Moses went out as well.
Yeah,
so I mean, it was just it was an end of season. It's the only game this season I haven't gone back and watched coaches take. So I'm just kind of like, there's not much you can take from that because there's that's not going to be how the offense operates. With a full team or even a half full team. I like that Zach played it. I know some people were very anti Zach even playing in the game, which to me is absolutely ridiculous that you would sit a healthy player because other players are injured. Towards the end, Andres, I kind of agree with you. Kind of let's not get him dropping back and throwing too much in the last 2 minutes.
Yeah, it was when Moses went out, and I thought you already had Feeney and McDermott just allowing the kind of there's two turnstiles. Then you had Moses goes out. You're like, okay, we've seen enough. The game's out of hand now. Like Zach's done some good stuff, but overall it's been just really a tough day. Like I don't want a last few minutes kind of massive injury to Zach, and it just sends our whole off season in spiral into the abyss. So that's what I was just nervous about, but I was happy he came out with it. Okay.
Yeah, we've spoken about the offense, but you have to give some praise to the defense because they came out really ready to play, and they played a really tough game. And they kept us in it until the offense was giving them absolutely nothing to work with. I mean, they were on the field for I think it was like 38 minutes or something like that. They were on there for a long time, and you got some performances. Bryce Hall, got beat a couple of times, but then he beat his player a couple of times, and Michael Carter II had a couple of third down stops. We didn't get any pressure on Josh Allen, which is going to be the story of the offseason because that kind of feeds into the draft and free agency, and but it was hopefully, fingers crossed, the last game we'll have to play without Carl Lawson. So. Getting Carl Lawson back is going to be huge for this team. And, there's so much we need to do on that side of the ball. But to see those young players in a hostile environment, because, the Buffalo fans were there for the, AFC East title chase, which they won. They would have won it anyway, even if we'd have beat them, because the Dolphins took care of the Patriots. But it was a good experience for a lot of those young guys. And there's a lot of positives to come out of the defensive side of the ball. So while it was a bit of a forgettable game and one that neither one of us is going to go back and look at and see what we can learn. At least we took some positives out of it, and season wrapped. Let's look forward to 2022, where hopefully we'll have a lot more talent on the defensive side of the ball with the young players.
Absolutely. I mean, Zach had nothing to do. There was literally the one throw to Keelan Cole was fantastic, for the touchdown, and I thought there was that one to Black on the sideline where he kind of raised pressure and really kind of put a nice throw on the sideline. But other than that, there was nothing much to talk about. Matt, what was your takeaways from the game?
Well, I'm going to get one last ref moan of the year in and say, how did they allow that Stefon Diggs first touchdown?
Yeah,
that right foot was miles off the ground. I don't know what they saw.
They said he caught the ball while his right foot was on the ground.
No, I don't buy it.
No,
do you know what I didn't like about that? I didn't like that they called it incomplete to start with. Yes. Then they called it complete on the field, so then it made it impossible to overturn.
Exactly, because that's what I was explaining that to the missus who was sitting on the couch with me when the game started, and I was saying now they've turned it over to a completed catch. They've now turned it to a situation where they're not going to have enough evidence to overturn it the other way. And so it was like classic situations like, all right, put us in a hole completely, like we're doing the best here with like one arm behind our back, and now you bring a knife into a boxing fight, so it was just one of those things. So yeah, I agree with you, Matt, on that one. Anything else you want to shout out before we head off to the season review?
The Bills punter is the worst punter I've ever seen in my life. What a nightmare.
Oh my God.
And the only other thing I'd say...
the Yipsies, isn't it? Absolute Yipsies he got.
Is something that, from Zach, and this is for next year, and I don't think he could do anything in this situation, but when we are not at the end of the season and we're kind of losing games, sometimes it's a balance, and I know we're all proud of him for not getting an interception in the last 5 games, but sometimes you just have to throw it when you're down in the fourth quarter and you're only a touchdown behind, and I don't know, there's just a couple where perhaps... you just need to give your receivers a 50-50 ball, and this will come when he gets better people playing wide receiver and a bit more. But interceptions when not in like taking the sack is arguably worse than an interception in some of those instances. And I know the box score at the end, people point out interceptions, but just even if it's a 10% play, that's 10% more than taking a sack. So
I think you're right. I think you are right, Matt. I think it's going back to something we spoke about in the season, the overcorrection side of things. Is that, early season he was taking probably too many of those deep shots and trusting his receivers and trusting his arm a little bit too much. Then he kind of overcorrected to playing like Mike White and just getting the checkdowns and not turning the ball over. And then towards the end of the season, you would have liked him to take a bit of a 50-50, and it's going to be that kind of understanding of when to take those shots and when not to take them, which is going to push him to the next level. And I do think some of that's receiver-based because, are you going to give a 50-50 to Tariq Black? Probably not.
You don't have the connection with him, right? You don't have it's the trust factor. When you're playing a defense that's that good, you've got to have a trust factor with your guys. Like, that's the only way you're going to have success against a team that's that good as the Bills are, and can cause turnovers the way they do. And then when you think about he's being pressured because these pressure's getting to him super fast because obviously the line is struggling. The receivers, he hasn't got the rapport with them. That's why obviously he went with Keelan quite a lot because it was the one guy he had left with, obviously, when Jameson went out. So you just, at this point, you're like...
I think the Buffalo game, he can't do anything about it. I think Buffalo game, you write that one off. But I do think Matt's point stands for the last 2 or 3 games where
other than Tampa,
we've kind of shown, I put some bits on the news there, some plays where he had that deep shot open. He had that Keelan Cole going down the middle of the field. I can't remember who it was against now. It might have been Jacksonville, or it might have been... I can't remember. It might have been the Bucks, but he's had a couple of opportunities to hit that deep shot, and there seems to be a reluctance to do that just in case he turns the ball over. Yeah. And that's something we're going to have to watch next season because you can't be afraid of that interception, which prevents you from doing what naturally comes to you, which is making those plays down the field.
I guess the frustration comes from the fact that this is his rookie year, so if he's going to have these mistakes which will get scratched off, they'll be this year. And I said it after the 4th and 2 play against the Bucks. If these kind of things happen next year, people will be a lot more frustrated and a lot less forgiving. So perhaps his rookie year was the chance to take those opportunities, but let's just keep it in the back of our mind, and it's something to watch for as we move into the next season.
Absolutely. To talk about the kind of end of season wrap up, we'll just have a quick segment of kind of something that we were kind of disappointed with, someone we were disappointed with that that played out during the season from where we were before the season, and then something that was a pleasant surprise kind of as a season total. So, David, do you want to kick off with your disappointment of the season?
I mean, it's hard because we are a team of it's such a useful team. It almost feels harsh to call disappointments because we saw so many good things. So, I mean, the biggest disappointment for me is just the sheer quantity of injuries we had. And that's actually going back to what JD and Salah said in their press conference, is that we've now had 2 years in a row where we've had the most salary cap dollars on the IR.
Yeah.
And that's becomes more than just bad luck. That becomes something structurally wrong or something wrong within the training staff, where you can't avoid these injuries. Like Becton's one, you can't really avoid. Someone rolls up on you, you can't really avoid. But we've had a lot of soft tissue ones as well. We've had a lot of hamstrings. We've had a lot of calves. We've had a lot of things like that. So, I mean, that was a huge disappointment because that stops your momentum of the season before it can even get started. Yeah. So, you could say, one of the disappointments, a lack of development from Ashton Davis. That's a little bit of a disappointment. Not being able to see progress from Becton because of the injury, that's a disappointment. But I can't see, Corey Davis, a few drops. That's a disappointment. That's a disappointment that he didn't make. Although he made plays, he never looked like that true number one that we paid him to be. So I guess if I had to pick one, that would be it. But I think with such a youthful team, so many snaps by rookies, it's hard to really come out with a really big disappointment. My disappointment is just that we didn't get to see the Jets that we envisioned we'd see, and the Jets that Mike LaFleur and Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas put together for the 2021 season. We never really saw that. I mean, how many times did we see Zach Wilson, Elijah Moore, Michael Carter on the same field together? And they seem to miss games in and out of each other. So
I think it was actually all of that was also before Booth LaFleur. So we didn't get that combination of Booth LaFleur with the first 4 picks from last year's draft. So hopefully we get that, and all the other guys who are incoming from injury and guys who are coming to the team new. So yeah, I definitely agree with you on that one. Matt, what's the disappointment you have for the season?
I think I'll probably go to the defensive side of the ball, and that defensive line is one of the positions which has a couple of first rounders on it and has a money invested into it, and people playing for contracts as well in JFM at the start of the season. And Foley was playing for one, and Quinn, and it's kind of on his radar now. Sheldon Rankins, former first-round pick, who's kind of probably looking for that big paycheck. And even after they had the loss of Carl Lawson, they never really were able to take over games, with exception of the Tennessee game. And I think they were probably the most disappointing because they have all of the talent in the world, that group. Quinnen, talented guy, Bryce Huff, Sheldon Rankins, Franklin Myers, all of these people should be able to win their matches. And it just felt like so many games were kind of mute points from the defensive line, and they were getting pressures and not converting, and getting half breaks and not quite taking over, and showing up maybe one drive. And we've spoken about the kind of what we feel is the over rotation of these top guys, and Quinnen playing like something like 55 to 60% of the snaps, and I think we just want a bit more out of them. Aaron Donald, who is far and comfortably the best defensive tackle in the league, is also the defensive tackle who took the highest percentage of snaps at that position. And it's just get your good players on the pitch, get them on the field where they can make an impact. There's too many times where it's 3rd and short, 4th and short, where we just have backup defensive linemen on the pitch, and it's frustrating, and it's kind of great. So I think they're probably the biggest disappointment for me this year, and hopefully it's something that with Carl Lawson, perhaps there's an edge taken at the top of the jar. There'll be more reinforcements there, can kind of turn around and improve next season.
Right, yeah.
Can I ask a question? Are we concerned about JFM after he got paid? Are we actually concerned about if we made the right move there in terms of paying him mid-season? Because post-contract, he hasn't done a lot.
Yeah, it's one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't at the time, isn't it? Because Douglas was praised for that move, and we were all happy with it. I think with JFM, he has been kind of the utility guy on the defensive line this season. He's played 5 tech, and then when Bryce Huff kind of done, he was kind of forced to play 9 tech, which isn't his natural slot. So I think the answer on the contract is still TBC, and hopefully the upside of having a pure 9 tech and kind of being able to use him in his natural thing, where he can kind of be that power rusher directly opposite a tackle. We'll kind of see that next year.
Yeah, I think that the game that Bryce Huff returned, when he was paired, I think it was one of the better games after his contract. So maybe it is what Matt's saying, that having someone opposite that's going to be more of that wide 9 role would help JFM in his role. Where and even if in situations where he could also kick in if we have 2 rushers, more of a pass rushing type. So yeah, I think it's still to be decided. But yeah, definitely JFM is an interesting one, and something again we have to keep an eye out for next season. It'd be a very shame because I didn't really peg him for a guy who's kind of likely to be that way, but you just never know until the person gets paid. So we will have to see. My disappointment will be more specific. I think you guys have covered things generally, team wide, season wide. Mine was actually the Falcons' performance at Tottenham. I mean, coming off that really exciting win where we saw Zach play so fun against Tennessee, I was so excited to see us face a Falcons defense that was really poor, and I thought a beatable opponent. I thought we were going to be the team that were going to make the most noise in the stands, and we were. But we just didn't have much to shout about, and it was a bit too late when we made that last minute, kind of the last kind of push to try and get the win, and then we let that drive happen at the end that kind of killed us. And it was just a disappointing day overall. We had a great time meeting people and stuff, but the game itself, looking back on it, I think that performance was so disappointing on the heels of what it came off, and kind of going there with my son, with my mates, and saying how good they were looked the week before, and just hoping that some of that would translate, and some of that would be like, look, this is exciting, and all the of my friends being team, the supporters of other teams, being able to see that the Jets have got something special there, which we think is there. It just wasn't on show, and what we had was that first down screech of the Falcons to make it worse, and just so that whole day was kind of hampered by the Jets no show effectively. So that was my biggest disappointment of the season, generally. In terms of, but there was a lot of positives in the season, a lot of kind of young performances, a lot of positives. So David, what's one of your, what was your kind of pleasant surprise, something that really kind of, you enjoyed in the season?
I mean, you could say that the entirety of the 2021 draft class, but I think that'd be a bit cheeky to try and take all of those. So I'm going to just pick out Michael Carter. Actually, I'm going to pick out both of them. I'm going to take one offense, one defense.
The
So,
Carters.
so Michael Carter and the Michael Carter the second. So you guys know I'm a big fan of Michael Carter the second. So, he's just come in. Javelin Guidry was actually really highly regarded as that slot corner coming into this season, and Michael Carter kind of took over that role almost instantly. So
Yeah.
he obviously gained the trust of the coaching staff very quickly. And he's not perfect. He's not the best slot corner in the league, but for his draft position to come in as a rookie, and he's made so many key third down stops, I think that's just been a really pleasant surprise because I just wasn't expecting it. I pay a lot of attention to the draft. I didn't know Michael Carter II when we picked him. I hadn't looked at him at all. So it was an interesting pick because usually if you pay a lot of attention to the draft, and we talk about the draft a lot, you'll have heard of the prospect. You may not know everything about him, but you'll have a little bit of an understanding about who he is. I just didn't know Michael Carter II at all, and that's my ignorance, and I probably should have, but I just didn't. So to see him come in and make a statement straight away, absolutely fantastic. Can't wait to see what he does next year. Michael Carr, just if he can stay healthy, he has got a 1,000 plus yard back written all over him. And I know our system rotates their backs, and we will see Tevin Coleman. I don't know if we'll see him back, but I think we will add a running back to partner with Michael Carr, as you should. But his balance after contact, his receiving ability looked on show at points in the season. If he can stay healthy and get that connection with Zach, I think he could be really special. And to get him where we got him, it's just fantastic work by Joe Douglas. I mean, I can't believe. I think I had a second round grade in him, so to get him in the fourth was just unreal. And I think most people had that second round grade in him. So one, the draft value of Michael Carter. Two, when he was on the field, he looked outstanding. And the same with Michael Carter II as well. So really excited to see what both of them do in 2022.
Yeah. Matt, what's your pleasant surprise of the season?
So JD's obviously got quite a lot of stick over the last year in terms of free agent signings and big expensive misses, but 2 wins that he's had have kind of anchored left and right tackle this season and have been found at very achievable contracts. I think when Becton went down that first week, there was a bit of a worry, and George Fant held down that side superbly well, like really, really impressively. I think you look at the stats, which I don't have to hand, but there was a top 5 tackle in some of those stats, and that is massive. And he's now kind of put himself in pole position for that left tackle spot going into next season. Morgan Moses, summer signing late in the process, and he did an excellent job at that right tackle position. We obviously hope, and it sounds like he's okay following that, leaving the Bills game, because it looked like it might be an ACL, MCL, but he's back and he's done what he set out to do. He said he wanted to kind of reset his value and get one last pay contract. Hopefully the Jets can get him back next season. If not, I think he's gonna go on and make an impact wherever he ends up, and he did a fantastic job on that right hand side. So those 2 guys anchoring the line did a much better job than I think any of us could have expected. So props to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everything you guys have said is completely right. I think for mine is more general. So I was more specific with the other one, more general with this one. It's just the overall tangible improvement you've seen from the young team in the different elements, the different rooms generally, and the coaching and the decision making. All the people who are young. We're talking about Ulbrich, we're talking about LaFleur, we're talking about Salah, Zach, and the young offensive talent, the young defensive talent. All of those pieces, you saw improvement in a lot of them over the season to a team where we were getting blown out, we're looking embarrassed mid-season, and even our losses at the end of the season, we were competitive in our losses. We took the reigning Super Bowl champions right to the edge. We were respectable against the Bills, even though we were really undermanned. These games when those teams needed those wins, and we actually played them hard and played them respectable. It wasn't some easy games that we kind of against all teams with backups. We played 2 good teams really hard to end the season with limited players, and the players who were there played their socks off. So I think overall the coaching and the players who did make it way through the season, you saw that improvement, and just rolls into the off season and hopefully into a really successful second season coming in 2022. So yeah, so that basically wraps up our season preview. We're going to go to
preview. It's a recap.
Preview. Come on,
Listen, guys,
Andres.
long season, guys. Sorry.
This is why we're taking a break.
It's preview, it's recaps, it's previews, it's recaps, it's all over the place. So that that's the end of our recap for the season. Before we head off, and we'll have one of our segments as we head off into the off season, we'll finish with our last round of It's Getting Drafty in Here. Okay, so for our last round of It's Getting Drafty in Here, we're going to touch on safeties. And David, I've tasked you with the task of saying why Carl Hamilton would be an interesting pick at pick 4 and why you would take him there potentially.
I mean, I'm gonna get a lot of hate on Twitter.
Look, I've given it's like a debate. It's like a debate club. I'm not saying you defend this position, but you make a case for why he's a guy that if we do end up taking him at 4 or somewhere around there, people shouldn't lose their minds about it.
In one sentence, I would say because he's the best athlete in this draft class. Full stop. He could actually end up being the most productive player in this draft. Full stop. People have a problem with it because of the label that's attached to the position and the positional value. So safeties aren't considered top 5 picks. The last time we took a safety that high was Jamal Adams. Obviously, his performance on the field didn't warrant a top 5, but he also got us 2 first-round picks. So there's to and fro's on it. I mean, Carl Hamilton will be as good as the situation he lands in. If he lands in a place which likes to be really structured in terms of how they use their safety or their free safety, you're not going to get the best out of him. The way you get the best out of Carl Hamilton is to move him all over the field. And the issue with Carl is he hits like a linebacker. He's as fast as a wide receiver, and he's got the coverage skills of a safety. So, he has pretty much everything you'd ever want in a modern day defender. Is the position valuable enough to spend the top 5 on it? And that's the only question mark in terms of his value for me. If they took him, I wouldn't be banging the table and having a little tantrum about it. He's not necessarily the first person I'd want to take. If you could get him at 10, absolutely beautiful. I'd take him at 10 all day. And so the question is that enough to stop you taking the player you want at 4? If you're going to take him at 10, why not take him at 4 if you really believe in his talent and his ability? So, these are all questions that people get really irate about. People get very angry about. I don't like to get too frustrated about these things because they're out of our control.
Yeah.
But I mean, Carl Hamilton's a great football player. I mean, that is the basis of this argument. He is a great football player. He could be something extremely special, and his leadership is apparently outstanding. When he got injured, he didn't moan about it, he didn't whinge about it. He actually took on a coaching role within the defensive backs. So he's got leadership. He's got high character. He's an intelligent guy. He's got flexibility. He's got versatility. He's kind of got everything. So I would happily take Carl Hamilton if that's the decision that Joe Douglas went with. I'd be on board with it just because we need help in terms of covering tight ends, in terms of players who can move around the field and match up against difficult matchups, and we haven't had that for a long time. So I'd have no issue with it, but I know a lot of Jets fans don't want to take a safety, and it's because it's a safety, and I understand that. I do understand it, but it's a difficult one to answer. I would say, Matt, this is a really difficult prospect to evaluate because of the position that he plays.
Yeah, I think the thing is the Jets obviously are kind of labelled as a 4-3 team, but if you watch them a lot of the time, it's a 4-2-5, and Michael Carter II kind of comes in and plays that nickel, but it's almost a quasi linebacker the way that the Jets use him, and he gets close to the line and he's used in kind of run defense and all of these different things. And I think Kyle Hamilton in that 5, you can use him in all 5 of those slots in a 4-2-5. You can use them slots, you can use them outside, you can use them as safety, box or deep, and he can kind of fill in those things. And in that sense, building what David just said, he would be the matchup player the Jets haven't had in God knows how long, where you use him as a piece to take away what the offense is trying to do. And that's the Bill Belichick special. He always says, I'm going to take away one thing from your offense that you love to do. And Kyle Hamilton is a player who can give you that impact on the pitch and kind of be used as kind of that close to the line run stopper in a similar way to how we saw Jamal Adams play. But he offers so much more in terms of his coverage and lining up over tight ends and things like that. So I'm not fully against it. It'd be interesting to see him come here. And I think the one thing that I'd say in terms of this playoff weekend, watch how Arizona use Isaiah Simmons, and that could give you a flavour of or a sense of how the Jets might be able to use a talent like Kyle Hamilton in their defense.
Yeah, I think it's he is a top player, and we have to see whether he's a guy that we really feel is a special player at the position who could make a difference in against those really difficult tight end mismatches that we may face as the season rolls on. He's a guy who can match up really well against those guys. So yeah, I think it's an interesting name to consider, and we'll have to see how it works out and not get too irate and maybe trust the process with this staff and with this coaching, with the scouting team, with the coaching team, and if they make the decision, let's back it. In terms of guys in the second round or plus. David, who's the guy that you're looking at in that kind of second round or later on?
So I think Lewis Cine is a player that's really come back into the forefront. I think after the SEC championship game, there were a lot of questions about him. He had a tough matchup against Alabama in the college football playoff final, whatever it is, championship game. He came out and he had a really good game. So he's kind of put himself right back on that, player who can do a little bit of everything. He made massive strides in terms of pass defense this year. I think he had 9 pass defenses in the season. It helps when you play on one of the fastest defenses I think I've ever seen in college football. So he does have a very active linebacker. He does have a lot of pressure up front. But I just think he's a well-rounded prospect. He's not perfect, which is why he's not a first-round guy. But he can do a little bit of everything. And so he's just an interesting prospect for the Jets. If they don't want to go with Kyle Hamilton at the top, I do think we need to come out of this draft with a safety. There are a lot of safeties between rounds 2 and 5 that you could talk yourself into. So I think, Cine is a guy that, he's a winner. Apparently, very high character again. And when I'm looking at these prospects, I always try and dig in to see if there's any information about their character or leadership, because Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh seem to absolutely love team captains and leadership and that kind of aspect, which is why I'm so high on Nakobe Dean. There you go, Matt. Nakobe Dean citing in a safety preview. But I think Lewis Cine, he's a very talented guy. He's an interesting prospect. He'll fit in the Jets system. He can do a little bit of everything. I'd be quite interested to see him in green next year.
Matt, who's the guy that you're looking at in the second round or third day?
I'm going for day 3 prospect, but a round 1 name. I think if it was a name draft, Smoke Monday would be at the top of that list, and he's a hard hitting safety who's super physical, aggressive. The kind of guy similar to how we saw Jamal Adams when he was here, fights through, takes on those blocks and beats his man and gets to the ball and kind of explodes in his tackle and kind of tries to make a blow. He doesn't just try and bring his opposite man down. He tries to strike a blow and make sure that they think twice before running towards him next time. He's kind of the guy, as I mentioned briefly when we're talking about Hamilton, is who play quite often close to the line of scrimmage and use his speed and explosiveness to close down the ball. He has his limitations to in coverage. He often panics when the ball's thrown his way and kind of tries to make a play on the man rather than locating the ball and kind of looking for those pass breakups. So he's still got a lot of work to do in that regard, but as a day 3 option with high upside, I think Smoke Monday would offer an immediate upgrade. And as we saw plenty of times this season, run defense is a massive thing that these Jets need to work on into next season. So someone like Smoke Monday, great look in day 3.
That's great. So there you are. You've got in the safety prospects, you've got top of the first round, you've got a second day 2 pick, and then you've got a day 3 pick there. So a bit of guys we can look at. All of this will shake out as we go through the draft process. So guys, thank you for joining us for our first season covering this crazy team. It's been nuts. It's been obviously 2 a week. It's been crazy, but we've really enjoyed it through the ups and downs. It's been a chance. I don't know about you guys, but for me, it's been a good time to kind of just sit and chat about the Jets. It's been a lot of fun. So, David, is there anything you want to say to the listeners before we head off for our little break?
Not really. It has been a load of fun. It's been really good to get this thing up and running. And thank you everyone for listening. Our listenership is going up and up and up. So we can't thank you enough for sticking with us, tuning in every week while we ramble on about the Jets. We've got some things in the works for when we come back. We're working on a few things. So keep with us and We'll be back before you know it to talk all things free agency and NFL draft, aka the Jets season.
Absolutely. Matt, is there anything you would say?
I'm just going to say that I think the Packers will win the Super Bowl. So you can call me out on that when we have our first one, but I'm going for a Packers Super Bowl. I think Aaron Rodgers deserves a second ring.
I probably would join you on the prediction that I think that the Packers will end up winning it this year.
Do you know who I really want to win it?
Who do you want to win
Cincinnati.
it? Yeah, I thought
I really want Cincinnati to win it.
I'm with you on that one.
Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. I quite like it. I quite like their team.
That'd be a nice win, but I think
that would be a nice win. So yeah, guys, enjoy the playoffs. Enjoy watching some good teams and hoping that the Jets become one of those good teams in the very near future. But yeah, enjoy that. Enjoy the Super Bowl, and we'll catch you after the season.